Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Is it Tuesday? Happy Tuesday to you. Tuesday the 12th. I feel like that might be wrong. No, that's correct. If you haven't noticed, Christina's in a boot. Very cute. So we're going to treat her very nicely today, just because of that. We're going to get started. We have a few folks getting coffee in the back. We are going to get some extra mics because there will be a Q&A at the end of this. So just so everyone knows, I'm going to do the bulk of the presentation, and then we have our other members of our executive team here that will be able to respond to questions at the end. I hope we're recording. And we're recording. Great, we're recording. And so there's a lot of questions about recording. I don't know if we're streaming or not. I know there's been some streaming challenges, and so hopefully the point of it is that we're recording. So we're going to, I think the coffee line is ended, so we're going to go ahead and get started here, unless there's any initial questions. It'll be about me doing a 15 or 20-minute presentation, and then we're going to launch right in to all of the hard-hitting questions, or hopefully really soft, kid glove questions. So with that, first, for those that may not know, my name is Eric Sholty. I am the new Chief Executive Officer. I have been here now on the start of my 4th week with Friendsview, and to say that it's been a whirlwind this continues to be an understatement. I continue to get to know residents and staff every single week, and it's been an absolute blast. Everyone keeps blaming me for the heat, that I brought it up from Southern Oregon. That's not true, because it's 115 down in Medford. And so be glad that it's only 100 up here. I did, for those that have asked, move into my Tiny Tim trailer, as it's called. Also FEMA trailer, as some call it. You name it, some call it everything. And my friends, my cohort, my group, I don't know what else to call them. They gave me a gag gift, if you haven't heard about that, my Cherry Street Plus group. I got a bucket, I got some roofing material, I got some duct tape, I got a rat trap, I got a promissory note, and a host of other items from my Cherry Street Plus folks as the day I moved in. And so I'm all set in my Tiny Tim trailer, as I call it. So I'm all set and moved in there. But for today is really focused on a couple of things. And I've called it really looking ahead. Since I've been with Friendsview, there's been a little bit of really what I thought was on the staff side, some anxiety about the new guy starting, what's he going to do, what's he going to bring, what's going to happen. And then really, because I even met with the resident council, I think that was last week, could have been the week before, just a lot of questions about feeling maybe uninformed, feeling a lot of questions about why things haven't been done, or things about why things do get done the way they get done. But more importantly, Eric, how are you going to work? What does it look like? What's it going to be like with you under leadership? And so really wanted to try to set a tone for that. And so today's presentation is what I'm calling looking ahead. I want to talk to you, just share with you the agenda, share with you my observations of all of my first 4 weeks. Want to talk to you about our financials as I see them, and as Scott and I have been working on them. Scott in his extensive 2 months, don't say 3 months because he's only been here 2 months, really the budget that was just passed by the board and what that means for our community. And then starting and finishing with what I call kind of a new hope for the next year. And then we'll open it up for questions. So as I said, the agenda, my observations, our financial challenges that we're faced against, and they are plentiful. Our 25-26, which the board just approved and went into effect August 1st. For those that don't know, our fiscal year starts August 1st. And then next year we'll have a better, more comprehensive budget process, plan, resident input, timing, when it will get approved by the board, etc. Once Scott and I are on board a little bit longer. And then again, what our next year will look like. So let's jump in. So my observations. This is what my brain looks like right now, almost on a daily basis. This is how my morning starts, and this is what my morning ends like. And I try to decipher it about every day. And so when you see me walking down the halls, wandering around at night in my office at 5 and 6 in the morning, and I had one of Scott's team say, when do you go home at night? And I said, well, there's no point. I don't have anyone in my home with me, and so there's not a lot of reason to. But I love what I'm doing here, and it's a lot of thinking about solving all of the things that residents and staff say to me. I am by nature a problem solver, and so I love the questions that are being asked to me. I can't solve them all, but I have what I call a short, medium, and long-term list, and so everything that gets brought to me ends up in one of those buckets. Not the bucket that the Cherry Street Plus folks brought to me, but my bucket in my office. And it lands in one of those buckets. And this is that bucket and what it looks like in my mind. But I want to start off with what are the really good things that I'm seeing right away. And the good things are, we have a long, successful history. Senior living organizations don't always last 60 plus years. And we should be really, really proud of where we started, where we've been, and where we're headed, which is in a really good place. We have a long, storied history, and I'm currently reading a book that was produced at the 50-year anniversary. It's a wonderful history. We should be very, very proud of our long, storied history. We have a very committed board and staff. In fact, this Friday, we're celebrating, I believe it's called our STAR program, which is celebrating, several staff that have been here 10 years or more. And when you count the number of years that group has been together, it's over 400 years of service to our residents. It's something very significant to celebrate. We have a new leadership team, and that happens from time to time, but we should be really proud and successful of the job that the board did in bringing together myself. I'm happy to be here. We have Scott, our new CFO. We have Christina, who hasn't been here quite a year yet. She's getting ready to round that bend. We have Abraham, our healthcare administrator, who will be here, I think, a year in November. And then we have some longer-term folks. We have Tim, who's been here with us for 7 years. We have Nicole Pruitt, who's been here with us, I think, 4 or 5 years. And so we have a good mix of brand new, the 3 of us, and some longer-term staff. And so our team is rounding out, and we have a good new leadership team. We have a new development that is complete and nearly full. Sutton Terrace only has 7 units left. That's great news. Pennington, which is the building right after that, has 3 units. 3 are about to come available, and so 6 units coming up probably this year, but has been steadily increasing its occupancy. And so the new development or newer developments are filling up and nearing full occupancy. We have a lot of choice and flexibility in terms of our community. Some newer, some older, some bigger, some smaller. We have cottages. We have our hub and spoke model. We are in the spoke model here at Springbrook. And so having choice and flexibility in the senior living market is really very, very important. Residents want choice, and whether that's cottages or it's assisted living or it's living in a high rise or a mid rise like Sutton and Pennington, choice matters to older adults, and we have a lot of it. We have dining options, several dining options. We now have a bistro. We have buffet style. You can go where you want. You can eat when you want. You can eat in your home. A lot of dining options. Programs and services. A lot of the programs and services are created by you, the residents. Some are created by our lifestyle group. And so programs and services, and we have a plethora of them, is really important to an active adult community. And then we have our very large assisted living that was a part of our development. That gives a lot of choice. We have our existing memory care. We're about ready to hopefully, fingers crossed, open a new memory care over in Charlesville. And so all of that choice, option, opportunity is what helps a thriving senior living organization. And so when you look at this, we have a lot of good things going on for Friendsview that we should all be very proud of. And it's all of those good things that will help us be successful in the future and why we've been successful in the past. Now, the challenges. And these are the challenges that a lot of you have talked to me about, that continue to talk to me about, and that continue to ask me about every time I get stopped in the hallways. And this list could have been everything that I've talked to you about, but I really wanted to hone in on some key things. First and foremost, what drives almost every senior living organization, kind of mad, and which we should be most concerned about here at Friendsview, is our occupancy. And what is it about our occupancy that I've really looked at, and I've studied, and I've talked to our operators about, and spent a lot of time with Nicole and her team about? Our occupancy is really concerning me in two places. The Manor Building, but more than the Manor Building, is Creekside worries me the most. And it worries me the most because even though the building is only 20 years old, it feels much older than that. And it's small units, it's a dated building, and it's going to be hard for us to fill because of the small units, dated building, and the cost that it's going to take for us to renovate that building. And so we have some ideas on how we're going to resolve that, but there is a lot of capital that it will take to do that. And then of course the Manor Building is like every Manor Building I've ever seen throughout my career that are just those original Manor buildings and how you deal with it. And what's really hard about both of those buildings, as you may have heard Tim talk about, is the construction of the building. How they're built, the type of construction they're built with, how do you join units, not join units, what does it do to the constructability of the units, again, the cost of those. So those two buildings are my biggest concerns and what we do with those. Some ideas that we have for those to fix those are forthcoming. Number two, our financial performance. I don't know what's been shared with you about our financial performance, but it's a struggle. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the budget, and you're going to see some slides. But the big things about our financial performance, the one that's most concerning to me and the ones that we have failed at is our debt service coverage. Our debt to income ratio is some of the highest that I have seen on a single site provider. We have $9 million in cash and we have $130 million in debt. I have not seen a debt to income ratio like that in my career. It's very, very high. Prior to our development, it was $9 million in cash to $44 million in debt. And so when we did the development, we took out about $130 million in debt, and we've only paid down $40 million in that with the entry fees from Sutton Terrace. And so we're figuring out a path to pay that down, but it's going to be a long time before we do that, and we're going to need new entry fees to come in from Sutton Terrace, from the rest of our entry fee product, and the turnover of those entry fees to begin paying down that debt. So it's going to be a long time before we see that, debt to income ratio get down to a more manageable size. Second, our NOM. NOM stands for net operating margin. And NOM is the best indicator for how your operators are managing the community. It's the truest form for me and Christina and Scott and the rest of the executive team on how we are doing managing the community. Now, in a development, it's hard to look at NOM and say, oh, they're doing really good or really poorly, because you typically see the NOM go upside down when you're doing a development, because units typically go away, you're building new units, you have to get stabilized, and so you will see that our NOM the last couple of years has done really poorly. And our job now is to right that ship and get our NOM to a better performing number. A type A facility like us typically will want to see a net operating margin of somewhere in the 10 to 20%. The NOM prior to the development at Friendsview, was roughly around 4, 5, 6%, which isn't terrible. It's, it's okay. I've seen NOMs in type A facilities as high as 20% for many, many years. COVID hurt NOMs for a lot of organizations, including organizations that I've been with for a long time, and that's just because healthcare became more difficult, inflation, staffing costs, etc., really hurt the bottom line. But we really need to remedy our net operating margin, because our NOM right now over the last 3 years is negative 15%, which means we are bleeding cash badly. And then our cash losses over the last 3 years in the aggregate is negative $10 million. And you're going to see that here in a graph shortly. Next is, in terms of challenges, is our deferred maintenance on the campus. One example of that, and I've seen it firsthand, there's a big slab of roofing material that's sitting on the loading dock. That's why in my bucket from Cherry Street, I got a piece of roofing material in my bucket. But I didn't know what it was, but when I was living in Creekside for a while, it was right outside my window. We've had that material, I think, for 3 years. 2, 3, Tim's holding up numbers at me, he's doing this. But for a couple of years, we've had that roofing material. And apparently, pretty soon, we're going to have buckets down on the floor where my office is. That's not a good thing. I think everyone would agree with that. And that's because our roof needs to get replaced on that building, and we haven't had the resources to replace that roofing. Hopefully, I'm going to figure out a way to resolve that this year. But deferred maintenance is an indicator of poor financial performance. When you can't replace your roof and you have water leaking into your building, that's an indicator. When I go to facilities that are looking to be acquired, the first thing I look at is what is the condition of the community. When I see cracked roads and cracked sidewalks and those kinds of indicators, you know that the upkeep, the average life of the building is not doing well. That's an indicator for that. And so those are the deferred maintenance are things that we need to be really on top of as an indicator of a good performing and financially stabilized organization. And then the last two, one, labor challenges. We've heard Christina report on us outsourcing a lot of our labor. Her and her team have done an amazing job of getting that under control. She's been reporting that to you, so we're making great headway on that. We've been reducing our days on hiring significantly, and so we're making great headway. But that has not been the case for us in the past. And then lastly, our contract types. You've heard me now reference several times that we are a type A facility. Type A facilities are very unknown to this market. We are the only Type A contract in all of Oregon, and I believe in the West Coast. That can be both good and challenging, especially when you have an uninformed consumer out here who only knows that. We have to work around that a lot with Nicole and her team, with educating consumers on what a Type A facility is. And so it's also an opportunity for us to look at other contracts to combat what is everybody else who's predominantly Type B facilities around here, with some Type C facilities around here. So contracts can be both a plus and a minus depending on the consumer's knowledge of the different contracts. So, a little bit more of our financial challenges that we want to share with you. You heard me talk about net operating margin. Here's the statistics for you that we wanted to show you. And first I want to start off by committing to you that you are going to see regular financial updates from Scott and I. We want you to be well-informed residents about where we are financially. So every quarter, we're going to be updating you on financial updates. And that's because we want you to be informed. And this is a look at the last 3 years of our financial. So I talked to you about net operating margin, and that being the basis for how we, the operators, are managing the community. And this is what you're seeing on this slide is the blue graph is the industry average for net operating margin, which is typically about 7%. So CCRCs across the state. Now just to give some clarity, this is the average of any contract type, and all contract types are different. So this could be a Type A, a Type B, a Type C. Some contracts are different. You can have 100% refundable, non-refundable, 80%, 50%. We're not taking any of that into the equation. We're just saying of all the 2,000 CCRCs across the land, regardless of the contract types, regardless of the refundability, what is the average net operating margin across CCRCs? And it's about 7%. The green is us. So the average over the last 3 years is about 7%. We have been negative 17.9%, negative 12.9%, and negative 13.4%. So you can see the delta is very large, and that is why we are losing each year somewhere between $2, $3, and $4 million from operations each year. And that's because occupancy is low, staffing is high, we are spending money on capital, interest expense, depreciation, and while those figures don't go into net operating margin, it's really our occupancy is low and our staffing is too high. That's the gist of why our net operating margin is in the negatives, and all of these other CCRCs across the land is in the positive. It's really basic math. We are spending more than we have coming in. It's really basic math. We also wanted to show you just a budget to actual. And this is not really special to Friendsview. It's kind of a lot of senior living communities have seen this over the years. I've seen it in other organizations that I work for. I see it when I participate in CARF, or I audit other organizations when they would come across my desk for acquisition. You budget for one thing, and then you miss considerably, and there's poor recourse as a result of it. And so what we wanted to show you again was the blue is now Friendsview's budget versus the green is Friendsview's actuals for the last 3 years. In 2023, the budget versus actual, we budgeted for a $481,000 loss, and we missed it by $2.5 million. In 2024, we budgeted to make $1.5 million, and we had a loss of $2.2 million. In 2025, we budgeted for a $231,000 loss, and we had a $2.5 million loss instead. And so we have this cycle of budgeting, but actually having a massive loss and missing our budget considerably. And so our goal and our expectation and our commitment to you is that our budgeting and our actual is going to be aligned. Because what we're doing is budgeting for one thing and missing it in its entirety. And so Scott and Christina and I are going to have a much better system, process for budgeting and actually being held accountable for the process of which we do our budgeting and actually hitting that budget. Because so far, we haven't done that in our past, and it's not acceptable as far as we're concerned. So let's talk about the budget. So the 2025-2026 budget, which again started August 1st and goes through this whole next calendar, or whole next 12 months. July 31st is the end of it. The board just approved this. And for clarity, I did meet with Scott, Christina, and I did meet with resident leadership and gave them kind of a heads up of what was coming. The goals are really simple for us. We need to increase occupancy with the goal of going from what is currently 82% to 88%. And I'm going to talk about how we're going to do that on this slide as well. But we also know that we have to reduce expenses. There's just no way to do that. Even increasing labor won't help us stop the losses of $2 and $3 and $4 million. We have to reduce expenses. And a lot of that is going to come in the form of labor. 2, right now our biggest advantage is in increasing occupancy. I always tell our marketing and sales team that sales will solve almost all things. We fill up to 95% in our world of senior living. 95% occupancy is considered full, and so that is our goal, is to get us to 95% occupancy. And so right now we have, upon this writing, 7 units left in Sutton Terrace, and so our goal by the end of this year is to fill that building in its entirety. 6 units, there was 3 more were coming, so I consider that to be 6 available. I think we sold 1 last week, so that number might be 5. 2 are open, 3 to come, fill those, ultimately 5. But to get Pennington to 95% occupancy. Cherry Street Plus, Springbrook, and Meadow Way are all typically very full. We lose 1, fill 1, lose 2, fill 2. So we fill within the marketing and sales team that all of those areas stay really full, consistently full, and consistently at 95%. Other than, needs renovation, any renovation goes offline here or there. So 1 or 2 units will be empty for a bit. But those styles stay really relatively full throughout the year and feel really good about the high occupancy that comes with those. Garden side, garden view. We have some, challenge with garden view, which is our memory care, is full. Garden side, we have some work to do there, but I think we can get that full. Springbrook, full, obviously, or getting full. Our one area that I call our laser beam of focus right now is Charles Beals Plaza. And the reason that is right now it's full predominantly with our resident residents who have either transferred from other buildings or there was a large transfer from Creekside when we opened the building. And right now we have about 32 units that are empty that we have a large push of filling with outside admits. And you might be asking yourself, why outside admits? And the reason is, in our Type A contract, there's a guaranteed healthcare component to the Type A contract that is a lower price that moves in there. If we fill those units with outside admits, we charge them the going fee for service rate, which is anywhere between $9,500 and $11,000. By doing those outside admits, we will bring in about $3 million to our bottom line and solves a lot of our financial challenge immediately. Now the question, of course, is, what about us? What if I need a room? What if one of our Type A residents need a room? And I want to assure you that there are many, many rooms still available. We turn over rooms almost every single day in Charles Beals. There is no concern, there is no fear that there won't be rooms available for our residents who we are committed to our Type A contract. So please don't for 1 second be fearful of that. But we do, that building was built specifically to serve outside admits. That will help us pay down our cash to debt. We need those resources. We need that higher price contract for our debt service coverage, for the financials, to sort through the way that we need to get that bottom line to a positive net operating margin. And so the marketing and sales team is spending a lot of time trying to fill that unit. In fact, we have 5 admits coming in here in the next week or two as a direct result of that aggressive marketing approach for that building. And like I said, we have 32 available units that are sitting completely empty. That building, Sutton Terrace was 97 units of independent living, and we built that building with 79 units. We are also turning the first floor into another memory care to continue to help support Friendsview's needs for expanded memory care as well. And then, as I said in my opening slide, our one concern is Manor and Creekside. And one of our solutions to that is to introduce 2 potential new contracts, which would be a Type C contract and a Type D rental contract. And so we are working through what that would do as a possibility to introduce new folks who are interested in a different contract than the Type A contract to entertain their desire to move here under a different possible contract as well. So, what does that mean for our residents? Rate increases is a big topic, and this is where this is a little bit of a sticky subject. So, a little bit of back history. For 29 straight years, rate increases here at Friendsview was 4%. When we went back and looked at the data, that was very, very shocking to me. It fluctuated where it might have been 3.8 or 4.2, or 4.5 here, or 3.5 there. But for 29 straight years, from 1993 to 2001, it was 4%. It's very, very unusual for any CCRC to do that. And we've gone through recessions, we've gone through inflation, we've gone through all of these changes, but it just stuck at 4% all the way for 29 straight years. And the reason that's unusual is because you're not dealing with the economies and the ups and downs of the economy to combat what happens through those 3 decades. During COVID, the national average for rate increases at CCRCs was anywhere between 8 and 15%. And so it was surprising that Friendsview didn't see very large rate increases to deal with the wage increases that we're seeing, the benefits, the inflation that took place, food costs that took place, which we saw upwards of 9%. It was all over the news. We know how it was impacted. And Friendsview did not, see an increase as a direct result of that. As I noticed, staffing costs increased upwards of 20 to 4% over the last 3 years, as we were trying to hire healthcare staff, accounting staff, HR staff, all the various staff that were hired, it was about a 25 to 40% rate increase. And so then, of course, what we've talked about, the operational losses of 13 to 18% net operating margin over the last 3 years. So how do we resolve this? And so for the last several weeks, Scott and I have been crunching numbers, trying to figure out, even with increasing occupancy, even with adjusting labor, staffing, and expenses, we need a much larger than normal rate increase of what we will believe is a one-time rate increase, and that it will hopefully go back to a normal rate increase next year. And as we crunched the numbers and went through the process and where can we do it, went out and sought market data from all of our competitors, what did that need to be? And we met with resident leadership to talk to them about it and came back with this. Rate increase of 10% across the board. Small exceptions on what that could be. We can't do it in Creekside because of a contract. We felt like the second person fee rate increase was already beyond the market, and so that would be only a 5% on the second person rate increase. So a couple of small tweaks on when and where some of those would be, but for the most part, we would introduce this year a 10% rate increase across the board, like I said, except for a couple of exceptions. But the resident leadership asked us to break it up in two buckets. And so the first rate increase would be 7% beginning October 1st, which is earlier than normal, and then an additional 3% rate increase beginning January 1st. The next part is that we are going to be doing a 10% expense decrease across expenses, and I'll be working with our executive team to work through that. And then, of course, our revenue increases through all of the initiatives that I've talked about with occupancy, etc. We believe that through that and through all of this, that the $4 million net operating margin loss that we experienced last year, we will get to a net zero bottom line this coming year. That Friendsview will have no loss of cash as a direct result of these initiatives. Increased occupancy, reduction of expenses, and with these rate increases, Friendsview will see a net zero bottom line this year, no cash loss by the end of the fiscal year. And that next year, we'll have a regular rate increase, and Friendsview will be on the track to start making money again for the first time in 4 years. I found this slide. Looks like the asphalt over on, roads over around the campus, with a little bit of a new hope springing through the crack that's over on the driveway by my house. And I bring this up because I've shared a little bit of difficult news with the rate increase that nobody likes to hear. But I'd like you to hear this message as my final slide. Here is my vision for the coming year. Change is difficult. We all know that. I always like to say that I like change when I'm the one leading it, but when it's not me, I struggle with it. And so I can appreciate what you're hearing right now from me. These last few years have been a struggle. A lot of you have told me you feel like you're not being communicated with. You don't know what's happening or coming. You haven't been told about the financials. You haven't been made aware of the changes. And I'm here to tell you, you have my commitment that that is not going to be what's going on. God bless you. The board, my team, and I are committing to enhancing your resident experience. I don't want you to worry about financials. I want you to live the life that you came here to live. And that is a great life where you're enjoying your programs and services in your home, and you're living a great, fun life. and not worried about the stuff that I just showed you. I want to be the one worrying about that and reporting to you positive financial outcomes every quarter. That's my job. That's what I want to do. And I'm assuring you that we're going to get there. We have a strategy and a plan in place, and I just laid it out to you, and I believe that we can get there. I believe in building trust and being transparent, and that's why I'm standing in front of you today, to give that to you, and I believe that that hasn't happened, or that at least you believe that hasn't happened, and I'm committing to you that it's going to happen going forward. I want to continue working directly with you. I met for almost 3 hours with the resident council, had a wonderful lunch with them. We had a good time. Mostly, I got razzed a little bit. They liked it. And I believe that we've started a good relationship and are going to continue to have that good relationship. I believe in this community, and I believe in the team that we have built that will be able to successfully succeed in this plan. I know we must make difficult decisions, but I also believe they're short-term difficult decisions. And that if we're successful, we'll be able to get back to the things that we want to do most. I always say this, I say it to Nicole and her team every week. Occupancy fixes almost everything. When we fill these buildings and we are at a high occupancy, we will get back to doing all of the things that we really want to do. And then lastly, our goal is to have the least impact on the residents as possible with the changes that we're going to make. With that,